Why, hello. Today I wish to show you a portion of a release I have planned. It is going to be known as Theological Instructions, and is a deep dive into divinity and empowering it in all of its aspects for your Pathfinder 2nd Edition games. Today we will be going over the first, which will be introducing icons for the Exemplar class, and introducing some magic items, which work very similar to how icons work. To go, I will give you a brief explanation of icons if you do not know them. So, the Exemplar class from War of Immortals has icons, and as you can see, they have a name and a trait to where they are in relation to you. The bands of imprisonment are a form of anklets, bracer, circlet, often a headband. They have some flavor text here. The eminence is what you have while you have your divine spark in them, and gives you an alright bonus. And then they have a transcendence effect, which has you use up that power and move it to somewhere else. And it is generally stronger than the number of actions for this. This is break free is sudden charge with extra. Does have the downside that you need to stride in a straight line, but for the most part is a better version of sudden charge in case you ever need to escape. And as such, I'll go over some of those that I have planned now, including a new one that I will explain loosely. As with icons, you get an item, a non-magical level 0 item of your choice that matches its usage. Da-da-da. It's something you come across that is imbued with this item, and if you acquire something else, you can put it into something else. So for my icons, I have introduced a new one that is very common upon the divinity sort of thing that Exemplar goes, known as allied icons. This is a brand new type that is going to take the form of a pet. This could be Hades' companion of Cerberus, or King Arthur's steed Lamre, which introduce ways for them to have companions and other additions, and have their divine spark embody other things. While it isn't going to be gone over in this, to start, if you get a allied icon, you will get a pet general feat, which is this, a level 1 general feat. It is effectively a familiar, except it doesn't have all the familiar abilities unless your GM says such would be good. Some of the uh, icons will utilize some that are not here, which we can see in the first one, Aider of 1,000 Burdens, which while manual dexterity is on there, it gives it access to item delivery, which isn't there. Item delivery is just that you can command it and it'll take an item from you, move, and then give it to someone else. So this aids it to hand around potions and other consumables that you'd want to move about the battlefield. Um, and gives it a enhancement that it can pull items from your inventory as long as it's within 15 feet of you, so it does not need to be right next to you, and treats these items as if they're on your hands, because normally item delivery asks that you be holding the item. This allows the Aider of 1,000 Burdens to take items from your bag and then give it out to someone else, could even possibly be you. And the transcendence for this of the greater effect is, for a lot of these, since it is based off your pet will gain some strong effect. And its strong effect is Heroic Feast. You spend 2 actions, and it grants your pet 4, and gives it access to the Flawless Feast. Flawless Feast is a religion check to treat wounds. Creatures who have received healing from treat wounds receive temporary instead for the next hour, but otherwise functions identical to how treat wounds does, and uses your religion modifier to symbolize your divine connections, and enables you to heal, or simply have it move around a lot, or item delivery a lot, depending on what you would like. Next, for the allied, I have the Traveler of Countless Paths, which is intended if you wish to have a steed or something similar for your Exemplar. And the start is when you put your Divine Spark into them. They will stride towards you and may mount them, with them growing to the appropriate size, as long as your Divine Spark is inside of them. If they're a flying mount, they will fall at the end of the turn, but you could fly up into the air, reach higher ledges. Upon reaching 9th level, you no longer begin to fall, but it still requires your mount to fly, as the rules are normally. If you do not command it, I didn't mention that before, but all of them will get a independent adjacent, and the suggestion that they're not going to be allowed to get independent normally. They'll get a single action to do something related. For Eater of a Thousand Burdens, Strider Interact. For Traveler of Countless Paths, it is to stride or tumble through, being able to use your religion modifier. And this one will give it a special action that it can take, known Race Upon the Land, to where it and all of your allies within the pet will be able to get a circumstance bonus. Then the allies and your pet may use their reaction to stride. If your pet normally doesn't have a reaction, it can use yours instead. And this stride ignores difficult terrain. A special thing it will have is Path Not Twice Taken, which will have you command it, and afterwards create a emanation of difficult terrain that lasts for one full round. This provides cover for you and your allies, or standard cover for you and your allies if the creature is outside of the difficult terrain. So this could be flavored as, oh, your companion strides and forth comes trees that you've passed through, great forests that you've passed through, that creatures outside of this forest simply cannot see you as well. And acts as a defensive hold position while limiting movement if the enemy is caught within it. Next, for body, I have Feet as Fast as Lightning, which helps you and your allies stride excessive distances and ignore difficult terrain. The Transcendence is Run Fast Enough to Fly, which has you stride using your land speed as a sky speed, and allies that were within 50 feet of you before you strided may do the same during their next turn. So they can stride to fly as you run fast enough that a tailwind gathers and lifts upon your allies. The Presence of Hurricanes is a alternative to another option that you have for icons, where the other wants them to stay close. This tries to keep them from coming close to you and would be a good fit for ranged options that exemplars might want. And the Breath to Level Cities of their Transcendence allows you to have a powerful cone and push people away from you in a direction of your choice. So allies caught in this could be pushed closer towards you, pushed to flank allies, and aid you to properly manipulate the battlefield in whatever way you want with a mighty 30-foot cone. Weapon icons is, we have a few. I have 3 for this that are items that don't get the same benefits. We have a two-handed, firearm, and combination weapon. For two-handed, it's that your weapon is clad in power. It is excessively heavy, and as such is far more destructive, getting a sizable spirit damage and ignoring hardness or resistance that the target might have, allowing you to destroy items and creatures that might resist your damage. With Culling Slam, you make a strike and compare it to the AC of 2 creatures, increasing your reach by 5 feet. And if you strike only a creature, then the bonuses you get from strength and eminence are doubled. So you can crash down on a single person or crush 2 people with a fearsome attack. For New Aged Iron, it is for the firearm, and whereas we have one that is all about precision and one that is all about utilizing multiple attacks, this one is far more oriented around you getting impactful few attacks in. As whenever you stride, you may also interact to reload, and additionally, you may treat it as a melee weapon with a reach of 10 feet for the purposes of flanking, allowing you to flank with a ranged weapon as long as you remain close to them. And the Transcendence of Fan the Hammer has you fire out a ungodly amount of shots, ignoring the reload property for your firearm, but allowing you to make a excessive amount of strikes. Yes, they're not going to do much, but you could spread them out as much as you want. And with having off guard can temper some of the penalties. Does do not increase your map until you have striked with all of these shots, but you do get penalties to your excessive strikes. You aren't simply making 6 attacks at full effectiveness. The Whims of Chaos is for transcendent or for combination weapons and aids you in allowing you to swap between the two. Your strikes do a smaller amount of bonus damage, but allow you to interact with the other options. Of if you're in melee mode, you can reload your ranged version of this, which for a lot of combination weapons means you could hit with melee, reload it, and then use the ranged option to shoot because they have the ability to do so. But if you were to hit with a ranged weapon, you can begin to close in closer towards the enemy if you wish to. The Chaotic Outburst has you let out a frenzied series of attacks. You make up to 3 strikes against different creatures. Between each strike, you may swap between melee and range version. You may swap one of these strikes, so only make 2 to instead stride. And all of the strikes with this are of the same map, and you increase afterwards after all strikes have been made. This allows you to make a bunch of melee attacks, make a bunch of range attacks, make some melee and range attacks, in whatever order you feel you need to. For Worn, we have a Chassis of Iron for metal armor. This allows you to effectively entrench, but with a different sort of effect to it as you harness in spiritual energies to reinforce your armor. You can give yourself a bonus to your AC and saves, but increase against melee attacks, increase against range attacks, increase the saves. You also get resistance to damage from such effects. So if you choose melee, that if the attack still hits you through this bonus, you gain resistance to it. And if you were to choose saves, you get resistance to any damage the saves might do to you, enabling even if you pass a save for it to become excessively minimal. Containment Release has you surrounded by an emanation of wrathful spirits that damage creatures near you and gives them weakness. So in truth, this will do double what the threshold is. And so it'll be 2. When you get armor potency of 1, will become 4, and etc. Additionally, whenever a creature takes spirit damage this way, you get 10 HP equal to the spirit damage they took. Since this happens at the start of their turn, you can refresh it multiple times, allowing you to gain a large series of small temporary HP. Since this lasts some rounds, you could go into the icon that stops them from fleeing you to keep them contained into this and continually taking damage. It does, however, hurt your allies as well, so this would be more intended for teams that don't have as many melees. Goggles of Countless Visions is a new kind of method that has you recall knowledge, or gain bonuses to perception recalling knowledge, and when you successfully, they're off guard, allowing you to use range actions, and the Transcendence Glimpse of the Future allows you to ready 2 actions, and use this trigger either on the normal ready trigger or when a creature ends their turn, allowing you to do powerful things such as stride and strike if they stride closer towards you, or strike and stride if you prefer to be closer, and other things as you prep, as you see into the future and plan accordingly. But those are the icons that I will be releasing freely. Theological Instructions will have several more, and possibly another type of new icon referred to as Trials that has its eminence be exceptionally weak, but its transcendence rather powerful, but require you to meet a condition in order to utilize. However, I am still working on whether I wish for this to be a icon or a class feat for Exemplar. I will let you know once we get to there. But that will be all for icons. Next, we will go over what I refer to as iconic items, which are magical items that function similar to icons. So, to explain iconic items, they will be weapons, tools, and other forms of gear that you can utilize, regardless of your class, or even if you have a class, as we have some that are built for animal companions, eidolons, and familiars. Um, they will function similar in that they have an empowered effect that they start with that will work very similar to an eminence for the most part, or at least mirror what eminences can do. An exerting action, which is going to be similar to transcendent actions, but whereas an exemplar can bounce around their divine spark throughout their items, these exerting actions require you to recharge the item through either means specific to the item or simply by spending an action to recharge it and whatever you feel properly refill it. Perhaps a divine item needs you to speak a word of prayer. Perhaps a primally empowered item requires that you attune it to nature and raise it high so the winds can breeze through it. But after exerting, you will lose access to the empowered effect and can't exert until we recharge it as previously stated. And while this document doesn't go over multiple copies for each group, there will certainly be some, as I have some as previously established for the companions of the party. I have a melee option, a ranged option, a defensive option, and one for spellcasters. Now, I don't have a price on any of these, as personally, I think these would work a bit better as treasure to be given to the party rather than an item they buy. But if you want, you could simply price it to be around a rune of that level, of the party's level, and that could be an appropriate value, as majority of these have a degree of scaling in them, and if not immediately apparent, help empower things. But we can go over the first option to explain exactly how these work a bit better. So, the Binding of Eternal Trust is for animals, namely animal companions, eidolons, and familiars. Um, the wearer and all of its allies within 10 feet receive a status bonus to their AC. This is just a passive that you always have. And the exerting action, which the wearer takes, so you need to command your animal companion or familiar for them to do so, is together we stride for 2 actions. The wearer strides. During this stride, each ally within 10 feet of them at any point during the stride can use their reaction to stride as well. They don't need to go in the same way. They could go back. They could go even further forward. Each creature that strides this way, including the wearer, receives temporary HP equal to the wearer's level until the end of the wearer's next turn. So they get a small pool of temporary HP if they stride, either the wearer or those who have to use their reaction. After using this, the binding loses powerful energies, so you will not have the empowered effect or be able to use Together We Stride until you either spend an action to recharge it, stride twice, or the wearer successfully strikes a creature that they are flanking, or have a creature that they are flanking be successfully striked. So the Together We Stride could set up for a easy attack next turn, or for one of their allies, as many animal companions or familiars aren't going to be able to take these 2 actions and then attack afterwards. But they can, or an ally can possibly get it, or get the stride, and because it is after using this, the stride in Together We Stride does not count towards recharging Together We Stride. Next, we have Cleaver of Titans. This is a magical great axe, so it has that as its base effects. There is no base effects for Binding of Eternal Trust, it just gives these effects. For the empowered effect, the weapon gains the reach trait, and when you make a strike with this weapon, do not critically fail. You create a 15-foot line anywhere you want in the weapon's reach, as long as one of those squares pass through the attack creature. All creatures in this line take slashing splash damage. Effectively, you take your big great axe and cleave through a lot of people with a meaty slash. The exerting action for this is Realm Ripper for 2 actions, raising your axe high and crashing against the ground, making a 45-foot line, and choosing up to 2 squares in this line, and having a 5-foot emanation around those points, or within 5 feet of those squares, also be affected by this effect, which is a basic reflex against the weapons damage roll and the empowered splash effect from this. As you crash your axe down and it shatters forth in a scurry of steel. After using this, it loses its powerful energies, so you wouldn't have the empowered effect, but you can recharge it either using an action when you critically hit, or successfully strike twice with this axe. Next, we have the Glimmering String, which is an attachment for a bow or a crossbow, and ensures that your shots will be deadlier the further they travel. That is seen in the empowered effect by gaining extra damage per damage die, depending on how far the target is from you, with you wanting them to be 150 feet to get the maximum benefit, although very few maps that I have encountered people run let you really utilize this. The exerted action is Fated Shot for 2 actions. You make a strike with it, and it ignores the lesser standard cover as the shot finds its way to assure that it will hit its target. In fact, it'll even pass further with less penalty to your attack roll per range increment, and if you attack a target far enough away from you, they'll be off guard to this strike, giving them a -2 to their AC, which is very similar to Incredible Aim, which is a little bit similar to Fated Shot. After using it, the string, of course, loses its energies, and you must use action, reload it twice. For the purpose of this, if it's a bow that has reload 0, or possibly even a crossbow, each strike is considered a reload, regardless of whether it's successful or not, or if you successfully hit someone 90 feet or further away from you. Again, not always possible, but I've seen some scenarios where 90 feet is a plausible distance. The Magnetic Bastion is a steel shield, has those mechanical stats, and has the following effects. Unlike the others, to where it's a passive effect that's always active, this one requires you to raise your shield, and it stops your foes from leaving within a 10-foot emanation of you until they beat your class DC or spell DC with a will save, so you can keep them close up to you. And now this exerting action is a bit different, as you have some options between how you want to activate it. You can either use it as a part of shield block, which is the reaction note, or during your turn for 2 actions, allowing you to force all creatures within a 20-foot cone to make a basic, or just a fortitude save against your class DC or spell DC, and you get to push them towards you, depending on their degree of success, and even possibly suppress them if they critically fail. After using this, the shield loses its powerful energies until you recharge it, shield block, or have 2 strikes miss you. Because the empowered effect and the exerting action are slightly less impactful than the others, the recharge qualifiers are a fair bit easier to fulfill. The Sun-Kissed Lyre is our spell option, and to assure that the wielder has the ability to use spells, you can cast Ignition as a cantrip, and if you have Widen spell, you can apply it to burst animations even if they're 5 feet in size. This is separate from the empowered effect, so even when you need to recharge it, you will still have access to these. And I think this is more so because I believe I want to support spellcasters to buy magical items and have something occupy their hands to some level, so that it's not ideal for a lot of them to just start carrying a shield, because there's no requirement to start raising shields. The empowered effect for this Sun-Kissed Liar is when you make a spell attack, you do fire splash damage to all creatures adjacent to the target. However, you and allies instead gain temp HP, equal to the damage they would have taken until the start of your next turn, allowing melee attacks to splash some temp HP onto you, and your melee units that are in the thick when you're using your range attacks to gain a bit of temporary HP. The amount of splash damage is either double the spell rank of the spell, or 1 if it's a cantrip, regardless of its spell rank. When you cast a spell that has an AoE, you increase the damage by this splash, showing that this wants you to some degree use AoEs, but is -1, so will never apply to cantrips, but will apply a lesser effect to rank spells that you cast. And for allies and yourself, it instead decreases the damage that it does to you to mirror that, oh, it gave you temp HP. In case those, since most of these AoE effects are going to require saves and aren't the same way as Splash might work. The exerting action is Dawning Sun, which allows you to empower the next spell you cast. It is either affected by the widening spell or becomes to affect a 5-foot burst around the target. If you have the widened spell shape, you can do this twice. So you could turn it to a 5-foot burst and then widen it, or you could widen it twice. After using this, the liar loses its powerful energies until you spend action to recharge it, hit with the spell attack, or make 2 attacks with spells. Similar to why this was an easier fulfillment to recharge, hitting with spell attacks is less frequent than martial attacks and requires more actions, almost by baseline, as there are very minimal options to even get a single action spell attack. And as such, you'll have a higher action investment for these attacks compared to a martial. But those are the options that I have planned for this preview. Again, I will have plenty more to introduce to you when Theological Instructions finally comes to. And I'll have several more previews for us to go over. I am unsure exactly which I plan to release next, but to give you hints on everything that we'll do, well, more me, but everything I'll let us go through and witness is fabled beasts of monsters that have the ability to activate hazards as a part of them and heighten up their ability to harm the party if they cannot deal with the hazard in a swift manner. Whether it be them charging up a breath weapon that's far more impactful than most breath weapons, or being more so that they are revving to spin up a dreadful tailspin, and unless the barbarian braces against the tail, they're going to get a large AoE cleave on many of the party members. Next, I also intend to introduce some class options for the various classes to give them a kind of divine feel, and add some more options for you to play with. Obviously, Exemplar, Champion, Cleric are going to get a touch up in this, but I have some others that I'm planning to do something with, including Alchemists, Bards, and maybe even a Barbarian path. But, besides that, the last major thing I have intended is to introduce more domains, more deities, and possibly adding extra domain spells for each domain. Although that is a rather burdensome task and might not see it to fruition. However, if people get support to wanting domain spells for every single domain, so you have an option between whether you choose the base one or one that I create, I will gladly fulfill your requirements and assure that, at least in Theological Instructions, every single domain will get extra domain spells, so you do not have merely one option and can choose between two. But that is all that I have for today. In the description of this video, you'll be able to find a link to this on Pathfinder Infinite, and I hope that I have piqued your interest. And if you have any wonderful ideas, I'd love to see it in the comments. Until then, this has been Claude J. Dean, and I'm glad you have studied with the Abaddon Academia.